Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you guys jumping on. Good afternoon. So I am going live in two places, on my public page and in our mentoring and training group. So we'll give it a couple seconds to get everybody in here. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you guys jumping on. I asked in our mentoring and training group yesterday what were some topics that they wanted me to teach on. And so I looked through the topics, and the ones that had the most likes made the cut. So I was headed in teaching solely on identifying your kingdom role. When I saw someone had posted about the rise of emotional issues in children and what to do about it, it had gotten 8 likes over the 7. So I'm going to hit that really quickly, and then I'm going to go into identifying your kingdom role and assignment for today. So thank you guys for joining me during your lunchtime. Unless you're on the West Coast, then you're probably just starting work, or in another country 12 hours ahead or behind. You might be sleeping or whatever. But thank you for jumping on for today. So I'm going to start with the first request was to kind of quickly not quickly, but really the answers are pretty simple. The research is still out there. Of course, research is always evolving. But when it comes to the rise of emotional issues in kids, I'll talk about it a little bit psychologically, and then I'll talk about it spiritually. What they have found is that the emotional and well-being, or the functioning of teenagers and adolescents, shifted drastically after 2011. And so anybody that is in a Generation I or iGen, they have found that they have more issues with depression, more issues with anxiety, more issues related to their emotions than previous generations. And when you look at all the research, the main common denominator that is present around this issue is cultural shifts. So there have been cultural shifts that can attribute to why we're seeing teenagers with more emotional issues than in previous generations. So ideally, those that are under 26 years of age are more full of anxious, more depressed, have more emotional issues than any other previous generation thus far. And it really comes down to social media. And like I said, the research is out there, and they're examining it, and there's a lot of different people looking at it. But what has kind of come to the surface is that the use of social media for this generation, 26 years old and under, has gravely impacted their emotional well-being. Because in the past, you could look at a person's emotional well-being and say, okay, is this triggered by their environment? Is it triggered genetically? And if the research you're looking at, genetics and even environmental things, some of those things have not really shifted. If you look, if you study a group within a specific culture, but what has shifted has been access to social media, access to technology, and that is having a dire impact on our children. So that impacts children in a number of ways. And I'm going to get to identifying your kingdom role in a couple minutes. But someone had asked about this, so I wanted to hit it up. I'm going to talk about that and then go into the spiritual stuff. The way that impacts children, beyond all the chemical processes that go into place when your head is constantly looking at a phone, when you're constantly engaged with information, looking at videos, looking at posts, scrolling up and down. There's a lot that's going on biologically that's going to impact how this generation functions and how they, operate overall. But when you look at the content of the information that they're constantly being bombarded with. And that's why we are working hard here to make sure that our kid doesn't get a phone until maybe when they're 15 or 16, when they really, really need one. Because the onslaught of information on a young kid's brain and vying information is really, really difficult. So the kids are being introduced to a lot of concepts, a lot of ideas that they don't have the emotional regulatory processes in place. They don't have the ability to really understand all that is coming in. So you have all this constant bombardment of different information that's impacting them. Then you have this constant presence of what they should look like, what they should act like, who is everybody following, who does everybody love. And if they don't look like that, if they don't feel like that, then if the kid has not been given the proper tools and clarity, it's going to impact their self-esteem. We're dealing with children. Children don't have all the coping mechanisms that adults should have. And I said should have because we have a lot of adults that act like children. And so we're seeing this rise of emotional issues. And I don't work with children anymore, but this is just based on reading some articles and obviously having an understanding of what social media is doing to this generation. It's impacting them. So it's impacting their self-worth. And so that's going to impact depression. It's going to impact whether they try things or not. It's going to impact anxiety around performance. If they're able to see other people excelling and they're not, and they're constantly bombarded in that area, it is a constant reminder of what they're not. And so when we look at this, someone had asked, what is the rise of the emotional issues? I don't know if people were expecting just a spiritual answer, which I'm going to give you also in addition, but that is one of the biggest things. It's not really that parents are working more in this generation than before. We have a whole generation of baby boomers who worked and worked and worked. And we're in the millennial, or I am in the millennial category of parents, that worked hard. And so now the millennials are, kind of bucking back at some of that. But the iGen generation, which is our children, kids under 26, they're struggling with identity and they're struggling with their emotions because of the constant bombardment, whether it's through social media, whether it's through YouTube. Only now, when you ask kindergartners, first graders, and second graders what they want to be when they grow up, they say, I want to be a YouTuber. Can you imagine? I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be an influencer. And there is nothing wrong with that, but that just shows you the level that media has had, the impact that it has had on our children. So when children are constantly on phones, when children are constantly on tablets, then they don't exercise. When you don't exercise, you're not allowing your body to do what it needs to do. You're not allowing neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, all those things to be activated in your body. And that's going to impact your emotions. It's going to impact your ability to finish things. It's going to impact your ability to cope with anxiety. It's going to impact your agility. It impacts all of that. So you have this high level of access to social media, to phones, to tablets, to computers, to TVs. It's impacting their level of physical exercise, which is then impacting their overall brain functioning. Then in addition to that, you have teenagers, especially, who are going to sleep with their cell phones. And I love this. I'm already preparing for when my kids get teenagers. On the way upstairs, I've seen this a couple of times. Parents put drop boxes and the kids have to drop their phones in that drop box. They're not allowed to go to their room with their phone. They're not allowed to sleep with it on, because all of that is impacting their sleep level. When you don't sleep, you lose concentration, you lose focus. I mean, there's so many things that happens. The processes, even in your body, you can't metabolize well. You can't, deal if you have like high intakes of sugar. You're not going to be able to process that well if you don't get enough sleep. And so in addition to what's happening to them socially and emotionally, then they have this physical part that's happening because they're not as involved physically. When we were kids, we would come home, do homework quickly, and play outside until our parents called us home. And we are pushing our kids right now, like, you guys have to go outside. Like, you've got to play outside. I don't care. Just dig in the dirt. And so we're missing all that stuff. And part of it is because the parents, are also so inundated with social media that we're busy scrolling. Our kid is scrolling, and we don't realize that what is happening with them emotionally is connected to the level of information that they're taking in on a consistent basis. So we've talked about the emotional impact of high levels of social media use. We've talked about some of the physical impact, and I'm just doing this on a summary. This is something that I would do as a presentation somewhere. So I don't have any notes or anything. I'm just teaching you. And the other thing that we need to talk about, we talked about not having enough sleep and how it impacts your body and how it impacts your ability to process information, how it impacts your identity, and then the physical exercise. So those are like the huge things. Kids need to be in after school programs. They need to be kept busy. When kids are bored now, they're given something to watch or something to do. And fortunately, it is not as safe as it was several generations back, where kids can just go play, but you need to figure out what you can do for your kids to get there. Now, spiritually, on a spiritual note, why kids are struggling with emotional stuff, and I don't think it's more than ever before, but it's exacerbated with the level of interactions they have with social media and images and information that they didn't have before, is the constant issue that has plagued humanity, which is a lack of identity. And I teach on this all the time. If a kid doesn't know who they are, whose they are, what they carry, that they're valued, then they're going to look for it in social media. They're going to look for it from their friends. And it is the job of parents to clearly give definition to their children. And when they don't have clear definition, they don't have meaning. They don't know why they exist. They don't know what they bring to the table. And then things like emotion, depression, things like anxiety will clearly set in. So things like establishing clear purpose, clear identity in your children. And when I say clear purpose, it's not like what they were made to do, their job, like I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes when we talk about kingdom roles. I'm talking about who they are as a kid, who they are in the Lord, and what they're supposed to be doing in this season, and giving our kids tools to be able to stand against pressure, to be able to be different, to be able to not feel like they have to bend and flow with the currents of the day. That is the job of parents to do that. And so the issue of children having higher emotional issues is multi-systemic. You have the cultural shifts that are happening via social media and the access that they have to information that their little brains cannot process and cannot manage. Then you have this whole aspect of the parents not being as present. Parents are not as present as we used to be. And I'm saying we because I have a 7-year-old to be and I have a 5-year-old. And these are fights in our house all day long to make sure that our children are involved with their bodies. They're in after school activities. They're involved emotionally, that they go to bed a certain time, that we limit how much they are on the phone or on the TV. They don't have phones, but on the tablet or the TV. You will have to parent intentionally, and it's going to be more work than it's been in any other generation in order for your children to fare well. Then you're going to have to give them spiritual tools, because with the bombardment of information, they're also getting exposed to things they shouldn't see. The stuff that pops up on YouTube, they're getting involved information of sexual information very early on. All this stuff impacts the wiring of a child's brain. And so that is my encouragement to parents. I'm going to go into identifying the kingdom role, but you have to be aware on multiple levels in order to be able to parent well. And then you have some kids who have emotional issues because it is biological. So it's not connected to social media. It's not necessarily cultural. There is something going on in their in their genes. I would say go get them assessed. Go see a therapist. Make sure that they are seeing somebody. If they need to get on medication, put them on medication. People are okay with taking pills for headaches. You need to be okay when neurons aren't transmitting, when hormones are out of balance, because sometimes people just break. All right. And then if there's high levels of trauma in your family, there's going to be emotional issues. If there's a lack of stability in the family, there's going to be emotional issues. If there's been divorce, there's emotional issues. If the mother or father is highly emotional, if the mother or father struggles with anxiety, depression, fear, your children model it. The children model the environment that you create in the house. And that's not just at 2 or 3 years old when they learn how to model. It's even at older ages. So you have the ability to create an environment in which your children will prosper and your children will do well. All right. So I'll take a couple questions around the children stuff, and then I'll talk about identifying your kingdom role. I know that there are two separate topics for those that are joining me on my public page. I had asked my mentees in my mentoring and training group what they wanted to learn about, and these were the two most liked topics. So I wanted to cover them both because, like I said, the rise of the emotional issues, I could do a 2-hour presentation on it, but y'all ain't paying me for that. And so I wanted to give you guys an understanding of the multi-systemic problem that's going on with that, and then I'll go into the kingdom, how to identify your kingdom role and assignment. So any questions around children, around emotional and spiritual, yeah, thank you for specifying what millennials are. People confuse it. They think everybody's a millennial. It makes me laugh so hard. After the age of 28 or 29, you're not a millennial. So I don't even know. I have to look at the map. But the group that I'm talking about right now is the iGen group. And those are 26-year-olds and younger. All right. And so I think millennials, maybe it's 27 up to 40. I can't remember the exact thing, but millennials are not in the group of the watching TV and tablets excessively. They're actually out there hustling. They're making their own way. They're drinking organic teas. It's all about health and the body. That's a totally different group. The iGen group is the ones that are 26 years old and under. And then there's a group after them, as well, which are like the babies, that are being born now. So. All right. So good. Yes. Any questions on parenting? I struggle with my bonus daughters. The oldest is very connected to her phone. She has social anxiety. I always seem like the bad guy when I say, okay, no more phones. She literally will wash dishes with one hand and the phone. No, that's an addiction. Like, kids are literally addicted to phones. So be the bad guy. Be the bad guy. Let you be the bad guy, because you are saving her life. You are saving her life. And if my kids are not teenagers, so I can't say what I would do at that level. And that's something I don't like when people say, well, I would do this, and you've never walked those shoes before. But if it's getting to that point, you would actually be getting your phone taken away. Like, you would have a whole week with no phone. We're going to detox you, and you're going to manifest like a person who's on crack, and you're going to throw your body, and you're going to get angry, but eventually you're going to see what's doing to your brain. So hopefully you and her father can work together, because the only way that that's going to work well is that you both are working together to deal with the issue. But I would not be afraid of being the bad guy, because you are saving her life. How do I navigate children's ministry this age of technology? I don't have an issue with using technology in children's ministry. Our church is actually a very tech-savvy church. And so we use technology in a number of ways, from giving, we use videos, all of that. Our teachers know that technology, for example, if they do praise and worship with the kids at the beginning of Sunday school, which they do, they can use a YouTube praise and worship thing. That's no problem. But technology should be about 15 minutes of Sunday school. It shouldn't be the whole Sunday school curriculum or the whole Sunday school lesson. There are some events that we have when it's like a parents' night out or something like that, and the kids watch a movie, and they watch Christian movies. There's nothing wrong with that, but you shouldn't rely so heavily on the technology to be teaching your children, because it's going to impact just their understanding. This is, and how could I forget this? The other main reason, so I talked about how social media impacts the brain, how it is impacting the physical well-being, which also impacts the brain, how it's impacting their emotions. But the biggest issue that is causing so many issues amongst children, teenagers, and adolescents is the break of social connections. There is a break of social engagement and social connections. And that's why if they can get involved in after-school activities, they can get involved in groups, they will still be able to connect with peers. The biggest issue that we're going to have, not just this generation that I'm talking about, but even us, is a break in social connection. Humans were made for community. Humans were made for relationship. Humans were made to engage one another. And so if there is a break in that, it actually impacts your social making. It then impacts your body. And so you need to do whatever you do. If you're using technology in Sunday school, no problem. 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. And then you got to make sure that those kids are engaging one another. They're talking and they're learning how to build social relationships. Because when they go home, it's a fight with their parents to make sure that they're involved and they're engaged as well. All right. This is good. A reminder that I need to get my girls back in therapy after losing their dad. That is important. Anytime there's a trauma. And for those that are just jumping on, I am talking about raising. Someone had asked a question in one of my groups about the emotional issues in children. So I'm covering some questions around that. And then I'll talk about our kingdom assignment, because that's not too hard to teach on. So I'll cover that in a minute if you're waiting for that. All right, this is good. And wise counsel. Thank you. I'll bring it to my husband's attention. Yeah, and let him watch this. I mean, it's not, they need to make sure you figure out a way to handle that. And they will manifest. When you take kids, tablets away from kids, they cry, they let them do it. Let them do it. Let them do it, because you know what is better for them. All right, I'll take 3 more questions on this, and then I'll teach you on how to identify your kingdom role and assignment. My daughter is 22 months old and I'm no longer with her father. How do I foster family time, including her father, given our broken family? I think she knows something is off. Whenever her dad and I are in the same vicinity, it makes her happy. She says, Mommy, Daddy, Genesis. Yeah. I mean, they know. I mean, they know when there's a shift in the house. They know that when there's a break in communication between their parents, even at a younger age than that. The biggest thing is to affirm them, both you and dad, affirm her that we love you, and just create space where you and dad can get along to co-parent. And so even if it's just once a month that both of you guys take her, somewhere fun, we call it Galaxy Fun Park here. I don't know what they have where you live. You can sit on one side and he sits on the other side, but let the kids see you together if you know that her seeing you together is helping her become better and helping her become happier and healthier. So I would encourage you to co-parent. I know sometimes that can be extremely difficult, but for the sake of your child, figure out ways to do that. How do you know if your children are suffering or have been impacted by mother wounds, even though the day you haven't damaged them? They say, all right, now you are in DTA. So you have gotten the list of the traits of mother wounds. You know what it looks like for someone to have a mother wound. And so that's what you would look for in your children. So you can go back to the videos that we covered, the traits of someone with a mother wound. Those that are in DTA know this. And then look for those traits in your children. And they may say that they don't have any because they don't know what it is. When people don't have languaging for stuff, they can't say that they have it because they don't have languaging for it. So I'd encourage you to rewatch the videos on mother wounds and then evaluate your own children and see what's happening with them. All right. Do you feel that 1-year-old children are struggling to speak words because of no? If you have them on tablets a lot, yes, it could be. It could be biological. It could be environmental. When kids are raised in homes that are bilingual, sometimes they have a hard time catching on to another language. So that could mean anything. And so I would encourage you guys to seek out a psychologist, a therapist to help assess what is going on. Where do we find the book about mother wounds? Well, you don't find the book, but you join DTA, which is our online training academy. And in it, I teach on mother wounds and father wounds. Right now, we don't have enrollment because we closed that. But when you have the opportunity to join, you will learn about it there. You can read from Spiritual Slavery to Sonship by Jack Frost. That talks about identity. There is some stuff on mother wounds out there, but there's not a lot. And I probably have to write a book because people ask me about it all the time. The stuff that's out there is on, it's a little bit new agey, and some of it is psychological and really good, but some of it leans in a funny way. So there's not a lot of books on mother wounds, but you will find it anytime you study the orphan spirit. Any books around that will help you uncover that. But we do teach on it in our online academy. So you can register for that in June when we open re-enrollment. Any wisdom on how to have a discussion with an 8-year-old who has been exposed to sex on YouTube and Netflix, possible masturbation? Oh, Jesus, have mercy. I'm sorry for you and for the boy who has been involved to that. That is so horrible because it opens up children really, really early on. And so you or whoever is their caretaker needs to just go ahead and begin the sex talks, right? And there's some really good books on introducing your children to wholesome, like Christian books, understanding their body and how to protect it and how to guard it. So when a child is exposed to that stuff, the neurotransmitters that are connected to that pleasure zone begin to be released right away. And so you want to talk to them about that. You want to make sure that they also have not been molested or anything like that. If you need to get a therapist or a counselor involved to help you talk to them, do that. But talk to them about their body, why the Lord loves it, why it's kept for marriage, how to guard it, and then help them learn how to deal with their emotions. And so I would encourage you to see a therapist, a counselor, a child behaviorist, someone not behaviorist, because that's not a behavioral issue, but someone who can help you walk with you through that. All right. Any more questions on kids? I may stop here and do the other part later, but I may do it. Give me a second. All right. So I'll follow up. We'll do some other stuff with children. People have been asking me to teach on how do you raise spiritual children and stuff. I do have some YouTubes you can go check out. So for those that are new or just jumping on, I asked in my mentoring and training group areas that people wanted to learn in. And so I'm just covering 2 topics. Now, the other thing is a lot of people ask questions that I have taught on. And so one thing that I would encourage you to do, if you have something that you're wondering, has Dr. Faith taught on this? Really just go to YouTube and go put in Dr. Faith and the topic, Dr. Faith and discernment, Dr. Faith marriage prep, Dr. Faith the spiritual realms. You will find lots and lots and lots of videos. So I posted a lot of those videos underneath questions of things that I've already taught on and I've already answered. Do you have any books on Christian authors that write about understanding our bodies? Yes. Chris Valentin, Havala Covington. There's a Purity Project. There's a lot of information out there that you can find that is helpful. Let's see. My son has a psychologist now, one for post-concussion syndrome and the effects, and the others due to a lot of transitioning over the last 2 years. He's 10 now, and I try my best to keep communication open. I'm homeschooling him now because of medical issues. Yeah, sometimes you got to do what you need to do. I did that. Binge watched your YouTube videos. So helpful for this season that I'm in. Excellent. All right, so let's talk about this. How do you identify your kingdom role? How do you identify your kingdom role? It is actually really simple because you're already part of a family. When you come to the kingdom of God, when you become a Christian, you are a part of a family. So your role is to behave like a son. When you become a Christian and you learn God as your father, you become a son. And so the hard part of becoming a son is when she said you have taught on everything for life. Bless you. The hard part of becoming a son is dealing with the dysfunction of your previous upbringing, dealing with the dysfunction of your religious understanding of family, and learning that your role in the kingdom is simply merely to be a son, to love God, to serve God, and then to build his kingdom. But a lot of people want to build his kingdom. They want to have a role and a function, and they haven't learned what it means to be a son. That's why I hit this stuff over and over. That's why we created our Destiny Training Academy, because I was seeing forever that people want to launch a ministry, want to launch a business, and they don't know what it means to be a son. They want to prophesy. They want to know their role, but they don't know what it means to be a son. To be a son, to be one that walks with God, is to simply know that you are loved because you are loved, not because you deserve it, not because you did anything to earn it. And because you are loved and because God sees you as a son and a daughter, no matter what you have been through, then you take responsibility for helping build the family business. The family business is the kingdom. And so within the family business, we all have different roles, right? So the first thing is establishing that you are a son and really clearly understanding that, because if you don't, you're going to feel like a slave. You're going to feel like you're working for God instead of working with God. You're going to allow people to use your gifts because you're trying to get accolades and validation from your gifts, and outside of understanding that you're already validated and you're already loved by God. So you got to deal with the work of becoming a son and not being dealt with or struggling with validation from outside sources, knowing that whatever gifts, whatever role you're given in the family business, which is the kingdom, is based on the fact that Jesus loves you. It's not based on the fact that you are earning it. It's not based on the fact that you did everything right. It's not even based on the fact that you're really gifted, right? So when you understand that the reason God gives you a role or gives you a function in the kingdom of God is because you have laid your life down for him, and in return, you want to build his kingdom with him, then it becomes much easier. And so that's step one. Work on dealing with the orphan mindset. Work on dealing with any of the slavery mindset. I teach on that stuff all the time. You can go back to YouTube and find it. If you need like systematic work on it, join DTA when we open enrollment in June. After that, then and this is what our church is based on. So our tagline at Legacy Center Church is identity, inheritance, and impact. Once you're clear about your identity, then you focus on your inheritance. Your inheritance are your spiritual gifts. Your spiritual gifts are going to give you an indication on the roles that you should be having in the kingdom, in the family business. So you can find out your spiritual gifts a number of ways. One, take a spiritual gifts assessment, right? But once you take the spiritual gifts assessment, that's not enough. You don't be like, oh yeah, it says I'm a prophetic, so I'm going to run and do it. No. That is first step of trying to discern and understand the tools that you have to help build the kingdom of God, right? So you take a spiritual gifts assessment. Then you have to make sure that you're in a church or in a community that allows you to exercise your spiritual gifts. If it's serving, get in a place where you can serve. If it's teaching, get on the education team or learn to teach children or figure out how the process goes in your church. If it is mercy, it's already kicking your butt if you didn't know, because mercy showers will let people run over them like there's no tomorrow. But you can go and check out my teaching on spiritual gifts on YouTube. So you want to figure out what your spiritual gifts are. Then you want to look for places where you could serve and grow in your spiritual gifts. Then your spiritual gifts have to be confirmed. So taking an assessment is not a confirmation of your spiritual gifts. You have to get in a community where you're serving, get in a community where your gift is then being affirmed. So then people will say something like, man, you're a great teacher. And so that confirms that I scored high on teaching. Man, you're an amazing exhorter. Oh yeah, I scored high on exhortation. Man, you have a servant's heart. Yes, I scored high on serving. Man, you have such a great counseling gift. You're such a shepherd. Oh, I scored high on shepherding. So you take the assessments, you get in community, you serve in community. And as you do that, then your gift begins to grow. And as you're growing and as you're serving, you have found your kingdom role. You find your kingdom role, find a place to serve and operate in your gifts in that place. Now, then there's some people who, as they're serving, their gifts just keep growing and growing and growing. And the third thing starts happening. They begin to feel a calling for the body of Christ. Not everybody feels this. I always say 20% people are actually really called as fivefold gifts. The majority of us are called to build the kingdom because we're all sons and daughters. We're part of the family. We're all in the family business, right? But some of you guys are going to get to the point after you have served in your gifts and you have served in it consistently. People have confirmed that these are gifts that are on your life. People that don't know you, people that know you, apostolic leaders, prophetic leaders, they confirm, yeah, I see this, I see that, I see this. Then some of you will begin to feel like, man, I feel like I need to give my life to the church. I need to give my life to this kingdom. I feel like I'm supposed to teach people. I feel like I'm supposed to go win the lost. I feel like I'm supposed to build programs solely for the kingdom of God. So one of the things that differentiates someone who is a son that has a role to build the kingdom and someone who is a son that has a role to perfect the saints is the desire to actually work solely for the church. If you don't have that desire to solely work for the church or the kingdom, then you're most likely not called as a fivefold leader, which is fine because the majority of people are not fivefold leaders. We're all just sons and daughters. And your job is to figure out your spiritual gifts and find a place to walk in your spiritual gifts and serve those gifts. If you're high in administration, figure out where in church, where in a nonprofit in the kingdom, you can use your administrative gift. If you are high in leadership, you're probably already doing it. Gifts just don't show up. They've always been there, but it's until you get in the right context that you actually begin to see them manifest. So some of you guys have gifts, but you don't see them manifesting because you're not in the right context. It's like planting, corn seed in the wrong soil, right? It's like planting, I don't know anything about planting, but I always use it as an illustration. But you want to be planted in the right place for your gift to actually be used. All right. So that is the simple way. That is the simplest way to figure out your kingdom role. learn that you're a son, deal with all the lies that tells you got to be a minister or you got to have a title to have a kingdom role. That is a lie, because we're all sons and daughters of the kingdom of God. We all have work to do, and we figure out our work by our grace, and our grace is revealed when we have clarity around our spiritual gifts. You can take a test and then get affirmation and confirmation from the church that you're part of, by what people say you're good at, by what people come to you for, and then you go forward that way. All right. So I'll take a couple of questions in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to do a couple of announcements. We have released our life coaching and certification enrollment. People have been asking for this for forever. And so you can now go register. It's at bit.ly/coach and mentors. And I can post it on the videos as well so that you can access that. You still have time to sign up for our dream class, which is this Saturday from 9 to 12. But if you've never taken part 1, you will need to binge the videos so that you are ready for part 2, which is this Saturday from 9 to 12 o'clock. Advanced dream interpretation, and you can register for that at askdrfaith.com and courses and events. Lastly, before I take your questions, I'm headed to LA next week, March 6th. We have our own event, which is an encounter night where I'm going to minister, prophesy. We're going to worship Jesus, and there's limited space. Only 60 people can join us. So you register for that at askdrfaith.com. The next day, I'm speaking at a conference called For Such a Time as This with Rush Ministries. The following week, I'm in Chicago. I'm finally coming. You've been asking. So we are doing an encounter book tour night on March 13th, that Friday night. And it's just me ministering, singing, getting to know you guys, encountering you, helping you encounter God. And that's March 13th. And then that next day I'm preaching in Zion, Illinois. I don't know the website for that. But I would love to see you guys there. And you register for all those at askdrfaith.com. All right. I don't talk about prices for my classes because I want you to go to the website. I want you to read through the website and get all the information and then make a decision about that. All right. I saw several questions here. Can you be a fivefold leader and entrepreneur? I know it's simple, but just fit charity or for clarity. That's what I am. And that's what my husband is. We are actually apostolic leaders, but we're apostolic entrepreneurs. And most people that are apostles are very entrepreneurial because they have this grace to create and build and pioneer. But I am a fivefold leader who's also in business. You could have more than one mountain that you're called to, right? So some of you guys know about the 7 mountains. Those are areas in society that every Christian should be infiltrating 1 or 2 or 3. So I am called to arts and entertainment. I'm called to business. I'm called to government and the religious mountain. And so and I would encourage fivefold leaders to actually be entrepreneurs. We are almost done. We're three weeks left of our Wealth Transfer Academy. And one of the things that I shared and I even taught on here is why every fivefold leader needs to be an entrepreneur, because it allows you to have flexibility of time. It allows you to create products so that you can have money for your family. So you're not waiting on the church or the kingdom take care of you. And so it's important to be able to balance that really, really well. Unless you just like married really wealthy, or you just come from a lot of money, or you have a wonderful ministry. And, not some churches pay their pastors handsomely, right? The bigger they grow, the more that they can do that. But generally, when you're starting out, it is a little bit harder. Can your temperament also be a good indicator in identifying your spiritual gifts? Yeah, if you're in DTA, they just finished DTA 2, our second group, just finished a whole series of videos, and I teach them how their temperament is connected to spiritual gifts. So if you understand spiritual gifts and you understand temperament, then you can, connect those. But that was too easy for me. We literally just finished those videos in our online academy of how you connect your spiritual gifts with your temperament. But I can look at your temperament and I can pretty much tell you what your spiritual gifts are going to be. I can look at you and pretty much, well, that's kind of prophetic, but when you understand people's temperaments, you understand what graces and gifts are connected to those temperaments. All right, what spiritual assessment test do you recommend? There's a bunch of them online. You can Google them. There's one that we use in our schools and in my classes, but I honestly don't remember the name because we just send out the link. But there's a bunch that you can just Google and Now understand that some of the spiritual gifts assessment are given by our wonderful Baptist friends who are a little bit of what we call sensationalists. Some of them, they don't believe in certain things still existing, like apostles, prophets, and all of that. So how they explain those or word of wisdom and on word of knowledge, how they explain it is not really how it manifests. They're trying to explain it within their theological context or framework. So but it will at least give you a clue on what it is, and then it's your job to get books and all of that, so that you could grow and get clarity or on it. All right. Any other questions on either the stuff that I taught on with raising, solid children, or identifying your kingdom? So I gave you guys a double whammy today. But I wanted to make sure to cover those for my mentoring group. For DTA, it's $39 a month, but price goes up when registration comes up. There's a waiting list. Okay, someone is answering someone. Yes, there's a waiting list that will be up on Monday because my whole website was taken down, which is a story for another day, but we're rebooting everything. And so if you want to join the wait list for DTA, that will be available next week. But you can register for the life coaching and mentoring certification. That's available at bit.ly, coach and mentor, and the other stuff at askdrfaith.com. All right. Any other questions? Bless you guys. Let me see. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm high in mercy, love deep and strong. Yep. You got to learn balance. You got to learn boundaries. How do I start seeing effectively? Knowing I see, but it's all over the place. Sometimes it's not. Read the book, The Seer by James Gold. It's one of my favorite books. Take some courses on the seeing realm. We actually have one on AskDrFaith.com, seer and dreaming realm, and get around other seers. Ask the Holy Spirit to purify your seeing stream. There's a lot of ways you could do that. Read, study. Get in community where you can sharpen your tools. All right. I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know what to do or where to start. Oh, you can watch the videos I've done on entrepreneurship, and then maybe next year sign up for our entrepreneur course that we do once a year. The Wealth Academy would have helped you with that. Let's see what other questions on Facebook here. Let's see. I binged. Okay, good. How do you know you found the environment your gift is to be revealed? No, your gift is not necessary. Well, let me say this. The environment allows gifts. So if you're trying to figure out, is this a place where I'm going to know my gift? They need to teach on the gifts. They need to flow in the gifts. They need to give an expression or a place in which you can learn. So you could just ask. If you go to a church and you're visiting, you say, hey, do you guys teach on the gifts of the Spirit? Do you help train people in the gifts of the Spirit? How does that work? And but it won't necessarily just be revealed by osmosis. Generally, it's through taking a spiritual gifts assessment. It's by serving and being effective in serving in those specific areas that your gifts actually emerge. Someone said, what are the mountains of influence? I don't have time to teach on that, but you can go to Lance Wano. He is the 7 mountains guy. I can teach on it at some other day, but you have arts and entertainment, you have media, you have religion, you have science, you have family, you have 2 more that I'm forgetting. There's 7 of them, but you can find that information online. God bless you. Me with a few. Okay. Awesome. Bless you guys. Hope to see you in LA if you're on the West Coast somewhere, Chicago the next week. And if not, we'll see you in one of our courses. I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll put the links that you may need for the information that I shared. All right. Bye-bye. See you later.